I remember back in Germany, we were traveling to check out a cave. Now, we walked in the cave. It was a bright, sunny day. It was comfortable outside. And as we walked in, the deeper we walked in, you could feel the coldness coming around us. And we kept walking and turning around, and it got darker and darker. At some point, you could still see just a little bit of light of the exit entrance of the cave. And then we walked deeper and deeper. It got moist and dark and cold and chilly. That's the situation that Lazarus and early Christians found themselves in, actually in the catacombs. When you think of in Rome, they gathered in hiding, and it was walking down step by step by step. It got colder and deeper. And there were these hewn parts in the rock where bodies were laying. So not just the cold and the dark, it was kind of bodies all around. In that darkness, in that hopeless place, that is where they gathered. And as dark and hopeless as in a grave, in the catacombs, or in a deep, dark cave, that's what Lazarus' situation was. He was gone, dead as a doornail. And it wasn't just the darkness and the dead body. It was 4 days after he had died, and it says there was some stench, some odor already, so no life anymore right there in that situation. And Jesus shows up late. Mary and Martha and Lazarus, all three siblings, Jesus loved them. They were good friends, it says, so they were together. And Lazarus was sick, and Mary and Martha sent for Jesus, and Jesus said, not that bad. He's gonna live. So Jesus went about doing whatever he did, teaching, meeting, fellowshipping with people, being his best self. And then he comes to visit his friends, and Mary and Martha are torn apart. They're kind of, had you been here, Jesus, this would not have happened. Lazarus wouldn't have died. What did you do? And Jesus faces the situation and could almost imagine his face dropping, his jaw open, and things like, oh my, I blew this one. I am too late. And it says in the scriptures, he was distraught and he made interesting sounds like groaning, like being overwhelmed or recognizing like, whoa, we're in trouble here. We're in real trouble here. Now, the interesting thing is, and what I love about Jesus is that he's so real and he shows these emotions. Jesus is tearing up. Jesus is weeping. He's weeping. And sometimes I feel like we have elevated Jesus the Christ so gloriously, so far beyond our human life that we miss the Jesus close to us who meets us in people who are feeling with us, who are caring for us, in the love, the day-to-day love we share with one another. So here is the flesh and blood Jesus, whose heart is breaking. And the people who are looking at Jesus when he's grieving and weeping, they say, "Look how much he loved him." And that's such a beautiful, beautiful message to me, because it says grieving is an expression of love. It is so hard because you love so much. And you cannot have one without the other. If you love deeply, wholeheartedly, you'll be sad, your heart will break. And it's the other side of love. And that's becoming so visible in Jesus. So Jesus comes and faces a hopeless situation. It's kind of not sure how to deal with this. And that's also the passage in Ezekiel. So God is calling Ezekiel and he says, "Go there and look at this field of dry bones." It's kind of, they're dried, no life in there anymore. Dried bone. Imagine the catacombs, the graveyard, no hope there. And God is asking Ezekiel, is there any hope? Is there any life left here? Is there any future in this field of death? And Ezekiel, I see him shaking his head and saying, "It's beyond me. You know, God. You do know. It's beyond me." And that's when God says, prophesy to these bones. And with God's Spirit, God's breath of life, there's some movement coming about. There's some new life coming into these bones. And they gather together, and tendon and sinews, and it's all, they come back to life. God can raise or face or lift us in hopeless situations. When you're stuck, when we don't know what else to do, when we feel like throwing our hands up, God is with us in there. And Jesus is right there in it with us. Jesus meets us in our pain, in our brokenness, when we are at a loss. Right there is where Jesus meets us. And that breath of fresh air as it raises the bones, the dry bones, that valley of death, in the same way Jesus opens up to God and calls on God in groaning prayer, "Lord, have mercy." You are able, God is able to deal with it. And the miracle happens. You hear it in the tomb, Lazarus moving around. He's coming out. The people are like, "Whoa, this is big." He comes out walking just like Shane, like a mummy, still not able to move. And Jesus tells him, "Untie him, unbind him, set him free." Jesus is coming into our hopeless situation when we feel like, I don't know, this is beyond myself. And these may be our small death, our small situations where we feel caught up or stuck. Did you ever feel stuck? He comes into that situation and is with us in it, calling us out. And often Jesus does that through other people who are with us right there in that situation. There is hope. There is new life. Jesus can deal with it, with our brokenness, with our limitations. God is able, my friends. And that is great news, isn't it? Now, I invite you to reflect a little bit on the same situation. And we have 3 questions. Ask you to share in the pew. The only requirement is no one is alone on their own. So I ask you to keep moving, spreading, making sure everyone has a conversation partner. What is a challenging situation you did come through? We all have been. You're alive. We're here. We made it through some messy situations. So, willing to share about one of those situations, and or share about a situation where you felt like tied, like Lazarus when he came out of the tomb. He was still tied up. When did you feel like your hands were tied, or you couldn't move, or you were stuck and didn't know what else to do? We've all been there in that situation. And or, what is a situation or something you worry about? What are you concerned about? Because what we worry about, that has some constraints on us. And sometimes sharing helps. So 5 minutes. Yes, you can do it. 5 minutes on any one of these questions. No one should be alone, and if possible, everyone should be able to share a couple of sentences. So, well, thank you, thank you. You all survived it. That's amazing. I could hear the beehive. So beautiful. Thank you for sharing with one another.